And as it's the first session after lunch, which is always the worst session, as you know, for presenters, that nobody likes to do the first session after lunch, I would like you all to stand up. Right. Those of you who have never ever seen or heard of Project, sit down. Great. So none of you have got any excuses not to ask me a question, because you've all got some knowledge. So who would like to ask me a question first of all, because the first person to ask me a question can sit down. What are you expecting to get from the session today?
See project in Office 365.
Perfect. You're going to see that. You can sit down. What are you expecting to get from today?
How it might plug in with the Office graph.
That's interesting. You're not going to get an answer to that one. You can sit down. It's a question. It's fair enough. Quickly. What would you like from today?
Management related to project.
Document management. Yeah. Great question. We'll see that today.
Is there any news?
News. There's some great news, yes. We'll talk about Project Lite, which is probably the main news. Sir?
Our company uses Project Place, so this will be interesting to see if this is something to look into more.
You can sit down.
Thank you.
The answer to your question is yes, and you should be ashamed of yourself. Ashamed of yourself. Sir?
Perhaps new ways to use Project Online.
Okay.
In an organization that doesn't use Project at all.
You show me a company that doesn't actually use any projects at all. You will not find one.
No, but we don't really use Microsoft Project.
That's a different question. Okay, fine. Okay, sit down. So you're all going to get pained like this. Go on, sir.
Interestingly, I'm interested in integration between SharePoint and projects, and see how we can take advantage of lots of projects every month.
I will do my best. We do. But how much I can cover off to your particular need, I don't know. We'll go to the back. Yeah, yeah. So you asked the question, you can sit down. Red trousers has to wait till the ends. So I've got red trousers as well. I don't wear them in public. Sorry.
Would that be me?
Yeah.
Well, so how do I identify the different user groups?
Brilliant. Okay.
I'd like
You sit down.
to get good demo ideas to show the project online part.
Brilliant. Okay. Please sit down.
I would like to understand how project interacts with Office 365.
Okay. Similar question that was asked over here, but that's okay. It's fine.
It's okay.
That's what you want. That's what you're going to get.
Yeah, me too. I want to see how it integrates to Office 365.
Okay. And last, but by no means least, so you had chance to think of the best question.
Actually, the same question as the first gentleman, how the project is integrated with Office 365.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Another one?
Yeah, absolutely.
How much does it cost?
It's free. Oh, no. That's right. Depends, like everything. It depends, because it depends on exactly what the user needs are. So it's like our different Office plans, depending on what you want your users to do will depend which particular plan you're going to use. And the same is true for projects as well. So we're going to go through some decks, we're going to go through some demo, it's going to be a mixture. At any point in time that you would like to interrupt me, that's fine. I will endeavor to ask your questions. I will also try to keep an eye on the time. If I don't keep an eye on the time, my good friends at the back there will wave at me and tell me that I'm going over. So I will try not to go over. Okay, so what we're going to try and do is look at three things in particular. Understanding the customer, understanding their needs, understanding why this is important to them. Sorry, I'm looking here and here. It's not quite the same thing. Welcome. Ah, no, so you can't come in. You have to ask me a question. Why are you here today?
To hear everything about the new project stuff.
Right. That's a good answer. Come sit down. Okay, so we're going to introduce the new project, talk about what we mean by the new project, talk about the customer, and talk about some of the sales scenarios that we would expect to deal with. Okay. From everybody's source of the answer to life, the universe, and everything, and those of you who know the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy will know what I'm talking about, we have Wikipedia. And Wikipedia gives us a definition of projects. But I will give you a simpler definition of project. something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And actually the end bit is the hardest bit often for people to define. You find that things that are actually processes, what people want to think of as projects. But the real proper project is something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And on top of that, you want to plan it, you want to resource it, and you want to finish on time and on budget. And if you get all those things right, you will be successful in the project business. It doesn't take a lot more to do than that. Now, which tools you should be doing to use it to actually achieve it will vary. Sometimes you can use the most popular project management tool in the world. And I will ask you to tell me what you think the most popular project management tool in the world is. So, like a hand that's raised.
The email inbox?
Very good. That's the first person for a long time that has answered correctly. Most people go to Excel as being the most project management most used project management tool, but actually you're right, it's email is the most used tool. In Microsoft, it's PowerPoint, but then we do everything with PowerPoint, so it's quite weird like that. Yeah, and it doesn't take long to work out that trying to manage a complex set of tasks with different resources using an inbox or even using Excel is challenging. And so people start to reach out for the various toolings that they're available to do that.
Yeah, housekeeping question. Yes, since we hear them from the other room, I don't know if you on the background would like to move in the front.
Am I not louder than them at the back? I can out-talk them any day of the week. It's no problem. Actually, I think I pushed the wrong button.
So why don't you move in the front?
If you can't hear me, just move forward. I won't, hopefully, lose my place. Okay. So projects can go from being very simple. You know, you can be planning very simple things, maybe a family party, a small marketing event, something that actually requires multiple tasks to be done in an order, or they may or may not be connected with each other, but they all need to be completed. You need to actually know that they've actually completed. Has anybody here ever been a project manager? Oh, right, perfect. So you know that the worst thing that can happen to you as a project manager is on a Friday afternoon, you phone up your, they've been described elsewhere as project slave, but we like to think of them as team members. You phone up your team members, and I'm keeping the cameraman busy because I tend to walk backwards and forwards, so I do apologize at the moment. That's the way I present. And you say on Friday afternoon, you know those 3 tasks I asked you to do? They're supposed to be completed today. How are you getting on? What do you mean you haven't started them? Why haven't you started them? What do you mean you're working on another project? Why didn't you tell me at the beginning of the week? What you mean you thought I knew? Why would I know? Bang. We have all been in that situation. And that's why we move from traditional, whether it's email or whether it's Excel or even whether it's the project management client, to a more broader connected environment. Because we need to ensure that whether people are online or offline, maybe they're on a customer site or something like that, that they can interact, and the project manager and maybe the project management office or the PMO are aware of what's going on, and they can have visibility into the project. So what we offer now is a way to ensure that the resources are used more efficiently. That whether we're doing classical task management, or whether we've got documents that we need to share, or whether we need to ensure our resources are used effectively, that we can see it. And the nice thing about it is, because it's online, just like with the rest of Office 365, because, hey, we're part of Office 365. We're not a separate thing to Office 365, we're part of the family. And when we look at for example, the tenant admin, project just sits in the tenant admin, just like the rest of Office 365 services do. So whether it's any of those things, it's simple to do. I'm going through the deck as quickly as possible because I want to show you stuff. Resources. Resources in organizations are one of the most challenging things that have to be looked after. You need to have them, but you don't want to have them sitting around doing nothing. Because if they're doing nothing, they're costing you money. And so one of the most compelling reasons that people move to what we call a PPM environment, a project and portfolio management environment, which is sort of the encompassing feature set of the whole tooling, is so that we can use the resources more efficiently. If we go from typically a 50% utilization, which is what you get if you don't have a resource management system, to a 60% utilization, which is the minimum benefit we would expect to get from moving into that environment, that 10% of resource utilization is effectively pure profit, because that can go straight to the bottom line. And if you look at consulting organizations, typically they're looking to achieve 80% utilization. That's what they want to achieve. And they can't do that unless they're managing their resources effectively. Now, typically consulting organizations will have very efficient time management systems, but they often don't have efficient project management systems. And we bridge that gap. When we come outside of those sorts of organizations, if we go into manufacturing, research and development, healthcare environments, whatever they happen to be, the desire to actually be more efficient is becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. The PMO. You'll find lots of your customers are establishing PMOs, project management offices. And these effectively, and you actually have people who are called PMOs. And these are people, I need some water. I can hear my throat. Is this, oh, this one's not. Project management offices have an overview of all the projects that are going on. And they want to clearly be able to understand which projects are on time and on budget, and which ones have problems. In fact, one of the most interesting things that happen as companies move from individual projects to a PPM environment like Project Online is they are able to start to see which projects they can kill. Because you'll find that projects often sort of get started like 2 years ago. The person who started them has left the company, and they sort of carry along on their own speed, and nobody quite knows why we're doing it anyhow. And the business reason that we had to do it 2 years ago has actually evaporated for one reason or another. And so suddenly seeing the visibility of these projects, how much resources they're consuming, whether it's physical resources or financial resources, whether or not the tasks are slipping. They're upping the volume over there. And of course, collaboration. And typically that goes around documents, but it also might be issues and risks and various other things associated with projects. Been told to shut up. Okay. How does project differ from the other parts of Office? Well, the most obvious one is green. We got blue, we got orange bits, got various other different colours. Project is green. And pretty well we're the only thing that's green out there. I say that because sometimes it's actually, when you're looking at different things, working out what you're looking at, which tools you're looking at, is actually quite difficult to do. And the colour clues, the signatures that we give to our products, are actually really, really helpful. Because there's nothing worse than when you're trying to explain to somebody on the phone, yeah, I'm in Excel. So what colour's the side? Oh, it's green. No, you're not in Excel, you're in Project.
Well, Excel is green, actually.
Is it green?
Yeah, and Word and Outlook is blue.
Blue, yeah. It's not that green though, it's a different green. It's a different green. Is that Excel green?
Yeah.
Wow. I spend no time in Excel at all, you can tell, can't you? It's terrible. Oh well. Anyhow, moving on rapidly. No, it's okay, that's fair enough. Slap wrist. It has all the attributes when you're using the rich client, the Microsoft professional client, that you would expect in an Office tooling. Particularly is very, very popular for communicating projects to non-project people, is this timeline feature associated with a ribbon, but it's very, very consistent with the rest of the things that we do. Okay, important selling point now. The old way, the on-premise way, there were two versions of Project. Project Professional and Microsoft Project Standard. In the cloud, when you come into the rich client, there is only Microsoft Project Pro. There is no Standard. And the way we differentiate between the two is we have Project Professional, the old way, and Project Pro, the new way. Is there any other difference between them? From a technical point of view, none whatsoever. They're exactly the same product. But one is bought through subscription and it has the click to run and the 5 license entitlement, and the other one is the classic on-site, one device, you buy the perpetual license and buy SA on top of that. So Project Pro is the equivalent of Project Professional. It's identical from a usage point of view. Other point that you need to know, it's worthwhile mentioning it now. For customers who have Project Server on premise, they have legacy Project Server, or even they want new Project Server on premise, they can still buy the clients through the Office 365 model. Because within the Project Pro, in the cloud, they still have the rights to use the device cal to connect to the on-premise server. In fact, Project Pro in the cloud, when you buy it by itself, could only connect to it on either run it freestanding or connect to an on-premise server. Because until you buy a Project Online subscription, Project Pro doesn't have any right itself to connect to a server-based server, if you know what I mean, a cloud-based server. That's a bit confusing, I know. But essentially, in order to access the Project Online server, every user has to have either a Project Online or a Project Lite user subscription license. The main addition that we've made to the latest release of the Project Professional client is SEX. Yes, we have these sexy reports now, which is a big new thing that we had compared to the older release. Before, the reports were very, very 1976. And we've moved them to these things that look really contemporary. But in fact, if you just peer underneath here, you can see it's very much based upon the Excel pivot functionality. So people who are familiar to that sort of reporting will be familiar with this. In fact, it's access, because what people don't realize is that the MPP file that Project uses is in fact an access database. And that's why we can do so much reporting now, and they've actually improved that dramatically in this release in terms of what you can do. So this is really, really easy, and we'll have a look at that. And taking this into PowerPoint is also very, very easy. We have, those of you who are project managers or have been project managers will know that when you look at your plan, one of the things that's really important to you is your critical path. Those of you who are not project managers, a critical path are tasks that if they were to be delayed will affect the end date of your project. So anything that's on the critical path will affect the end date of the project. But now we've added what we call successors and predecessors. And this means that if you have a task that is not on the critical path, but you need to know what's going to affect it if they slip or it slips, then you can highlight those very easily. And what you can see here is this slightly different coloring, because the one which is highlighted, which is somewhere over here, is showing you that if it changes, these ones will be affected. And in a complex project, being able to do that is really, really useful. Down here, we have our virtual whiteboard. So imagine a whiteboard with all your people and what they're doing. And here you can see the various tasks they're doing. And here you can see that this person is overcommitted based upon their amount of hours that you would normally expect them to have. And you can actually click on this, and there's a wizard that will help you fix that. And if you're connected to the server, it will show you the other projects people are working on. And this is really useful. That call on the Friday afternoon, I didn't know you were working on another project. Well, now there's no reason not to know people were working on another project. Okay. Across all of the project in Office 365 and on-prem, we now have full link integration. So whether you're in the online environment or in the client environment, if you're connected and you have a link inside your organization, your awareness will pop up. Now, if you think of that as a project manager, that's incredibly useful. I want Lotta over here to do a task for today, for the next week, and I click on her and I'll see that she's out of the office on vacation. I can immediately see that. Or I'm not sure if the task is going to take 5 days or 10 days. I can immediately go into a conversation and ask her. So it's not the situation where I'm putting the plan together, I'm not sure, and I have to email somebody and hope they get back to me in time for me to make the plan solid. So if the person's around, I can immediately ask them. If they're away, I know that, so I can plan around it. So that's one of the things. Now, Project Professional, Project Pro, can work in 3 modes. Mode 1, standalone. It doesn't need anything else at all. It can just work by itself. That's fine. Lots of people use it like that. Number 2, the way that we classically think of it is connected to a server, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. In the cloud, that's Project Online. And number 3 is it can connect to SharePoint. And it can connect particularly to SharePoint task lists. And this means that particularly useful when you're brainstorming, you want to share a plan with people, but you don't want them to install Project Pro. A project manager or anybody can start a task list. They can bring it down into the Project Professional client, fix it so it's all properly set up, share it back into that SharePoint site, and then all the team members can see that, and they can interact with it as well. So why would you have the server Project Online and not just make do with SharePoint? The answer is very simple. There are 2 key reasons. 1, you cannot get a summary of all the projects. Each project is effectively disconnected from every other project. It doesn't share resources or anything like that at all. You can't get an overview. And the second thing is about resources. If I add a resource to a task, and as a typical project manager, I change my mind tomorrow and decide it's going to be somebody else, and then the day after that, for other reasons, I put the first person back to it. Every time I change that, the person who I've allocated that task, or people to, are going to get an email telling them that they've got it, they haven't got it, they have got it, they haven't got it. They're going to go crazy. In the connected world of Project Online, we have the idea of a draft and a published plan. And in a draft plan, I can play about with the resources to my heart's content as a planner, but not until I publish it will those tasks be allocated out to the individuals. And so if you've got a lot of resource management, having Project Online is much what you want to do compared to using SharePoint. But this is a great way to start up projects. If you're not quite sure, if you want to build a work breakdown structure or do a simple, get the ideas in for people of how the project's going to break out. And here you can see what the plan would look like. You created it in the Project Professional client. You've synced it into Office 365 SharePoint. And this is any SharePoint in Office 365. So, you know, basically, if anybody who's got SharePoint Plan 1, well, that's nobody. But most people have got Plan 2 in an E3 or an E4. And then you'll get the tasks, you'll get the timeline. Now, you'll see as we look into Project Online, that Project Online uses a very similar structure in its SharePoint sites. But the difference is that in this one, when it's in SharePoint, you can edit the task directly in the task list. But when this is connected to the Project Online, you'll get a bar across here telling you that you must do the edits in the Project Online client. Project standard, the old way. I called it project standalone, but from Office 365 perspective, it doesn't exist. It's just not available. Project professional, project pro, it's about collaboration. It's about working together. You see, both Project Professional 2013 and Project Pro. Notice Project Pro doesn't have a version number. Can be used standalone or connected to a local server. But if it wants to connect to a server, it needs a client access license. But essentially, Project Pro is typically what professional project managers will use for advanced management, reporting, and such like. So forget the hero SKU there, that's rubbish. From our perspective, the hero SKU is the Proj Pro. Somebody asked me what the price was. And the price per user without connecting to Project Online, so in a sort of freestanding mode, is, I can only tell you in dollars because I've got 5 currencies in Europe and I can't cope with that. It's $28 per user per month. Okay? And that Project Professional typically costs somewhere around about $1,200 or $1,400 to buy the on-premise version, and then you put SA on top. So actually it's slightly cheaper if you buy it on subscription over a 3-year period than if you buy it on a standalone, you know, on the classic way of buying it. Okay. Ignore the size of businesses, it doesn't matter. Who are we selling to? Well, classically we have quite a big installed base. Your customers will be running this stuff. And there'll be a few, but not very many, who are using version 2003. I've done some analysis recently on this, and what you see is people buy often on select, so they have licenses that are holdovers, but they buy it. They'll buy 500 copies of 2003, then 3 years later, or 4 years later, they bought 500 copies of 2007, and they've bought another 500 copies another 4 years later of 2010. And they're all bought on select, they don't have SA. And when we look at it, we say, oh, they've got 1,500 copies. No, they haven't. They've got 500 because they've got 500 people who need to use it as far as they're concerned. These are the guys we really want to get into 2013 into subscription. We want to keep these guys using the latest version. It really is, you know, I can understand why they've done it, but the reality is that obviously with the online model, people can step up and step down the number of people very easily. They've got on subscription, whereas before when they purchased it under an EA, that's much tougher. You can't easily reduce your numbers. So having subscription is a much better thing. Every industry does projects. There isn't an industry that doesn't do projects. The hardest one to sell to, just for your information, is actually construction. Because construction tend to do everything, well, it's the way your business is organized. You've got lots and lots of suppliers all tend to work together, and they don't often have a holistic view of what they're doing. But whether you're in telecoms, professional services, up there manufacturing, all of these sorts of organizations, government, I've spent a lot of time with government organizations here in Sweden, are using Project and Project Server in the old releases. And these are people you should be talking to. These are people we should be moving into the latest releases in the cloud. The audience, well, obviously we tend to talk to the IT department, but often they're not the people who are the most going to get the most benefit from it. So, you know, you have to look, especially look for PMOs. If they have set up or they want to set up a PMO, we should be helping you to talk to those guys. Okay, top reasons. Here's an interesting fact. Some research that was done last year, talked to, I don't know what sample of business managers there were, but quite a lot. 78% of the sample worldwide, before they started the project, this is before they started the project, thought their project was either going to completely or partially fail. 78%. You have to ask yourself is, why would you start a project that you think is going to fail? Why? Because they have to. They've been told to do something. So the reality is that we have to help to reduce that number. That's a terrible, terrible number to have. So here are some interesting things. These are the reasons why people want to do project management. Obviously, they want to manage projects. They want to track the costs and be in control of the costs. They want to have clearer plans. Frankly, that very rarely happens because often, unless the people who are running the plans have been properly trained, they either do it at too high a level or at too detailed level. I've seen both. And actually finding the right level to plan at is actually one of the hardest things that you can do. If they're a bit more mature, they want to see how their plans, how efficient they are with their plans and how their projects have run. And they do that by producing all sorts of interesting reports. The reality is, I have a particular customer in the Netherlands that manufactures the equipment that makes the dies for chips, for silicon chips. In the Netherlands it could be potato chips, but in this case it's proper chips. And they're planning out 3-4 years ahead as to the sorts of equipment they need to have to build. And to them, this stuff is not just part of their business. Projects are their business. You know, we tend to think of projects as being something on the side, but for lots of organizations, projects is what they do. Every sales proposal that somebody receives is a project. It may be a project just to reply to the proposal, or it may be a project right through the end of delivering the product to the customer. It's a project.
Can I ask you a question?
You can ask me a question.
I've been working in the front side of this area for 20 years almost, and in my experience, a lot of companies that I've worked with have tried projects, and then it turned out to be a little difficult, so they tend to quit. And now when I want to show them, look, you have project online, they are a little scared of it. So what would be your suggestion on how to reignite a client that is a little scared of project and instead using other like rental features like Project Lite?
Okay, well, first of all, this is a rental model, so there's no difference from that perspective, okay? Those of you who've used Project Place will know that if you've got the more projects you have, the more expensive it gets, and can end up being a lot more expensive than this, very, very easily. That's 2. Third thing is, the reason that projects fail is lack of training for people. As a rule, the reason people fail to use it properly is they haven't had sufficient training on how to use it. So I very much, when I'm talking to customers, emphasize the need for adequate training of the users. That's 1. And then, I'm in Sweden. I better be careful who I talk about now because it is a Swedish organization that I'm going to go mention now, but not the name of it. But part of the Swedish government had Project Server 2007, and then they went to Project Server 2010, and they called me in and they said, well, you know, we've moved from 2007 to 2010, and we know that 2010 is better software than 2007, but we're not seeing any difference. You know, we've got 1,500 projects a year, and we've got 100 project managers, and it's going exactly the same way as it did on 2007. So I promise you, I am not lying to you in the slightest here. So I said to them, how much training did you give to your project managers for the new release? Oh, none at all. And do they get a bonus? Yes. And how much of that bonus is paid upon them doing projects the way that you want them to do it? Nothing at all. So you've neither given them a carrot, nor have you a stick. So why do you expect them to behave in a different way than they were behaving before? So it is not about the software, it's about the people. It's just a fact of life. In all of the cases where it fails, it's about the people.
But today, that is more or less the challenge, because when I started doing training 20 years ago, everybody loved going to trainings. You took people to 2 days for Word Basic and 2 days for Word everything. Nowadays, no one takes the time. So how do you suggest, or what is the minimum training that you need in order to actually be
Okay, so as we get to it, as we will do shortly, and we get to Project Online, the point is that the project professional client is not, and I think this is one of the biggest problems, is it's often given to managers to manage projects, but actually it's much too complicated for them. Has anybody ever seen a spreadsheet where somebody's just keyed in all the numbers manually and they've never used formulas because they don't really understand formulas, but they know it looks impressive if they put all the numbers in there? Yeah? So that's exactly what happens with people who don't know how to use it. So what you do is you say, well, you don't want the project professional client. It's too complicated for you. What you want is the project online client, what we call project web app, which is a simpler form of updating tasks. You don't need to be a guru in understanding how to use the scheduling and the task management. It's very, very simple. Because people who are managing projects, if the project professional is too complex for them, probably their projects aren't that complex. Because if their projects were that complex, you'd have professional project managers, all of whom know how to use the project professional client, because that's their profession. But for those people who are not professional project managers, then Project Pro is often just not the right tool for them. And I think we've now got this sort of breadth of tooling that we can offer people to do the stuff they want to do. And we'll have a look at that shortly. The Excel thing is always amusing. So, it's quite interesting because I'm just going to sort of look at what I think is a typical scenario. Now, I'm talking specifically, and you need to think about this from the organizations, but people who need a project and portfolio management solution. We tend to look historically at the data to get some idea of what the shape of it is. So let's take, and I'm using this number purely as a theoretical starting point. Up to now, if they have 1,000 copies of Office, we would expect to see somewhere around the region of 100 copies of Project, between 50 and 100. That's the classic, we call that attach rate. I'm sure you may have heard that term before. And that's typically what we would see. It's very rare that we don't see something in that area overall. It varies obviously individually, but on average. When you add in, if they're going to use the server, currently Project Server, then we would have the PWA users in this scenario would typically be maybe 200 maximum. If it was 50, it would be somewhere between 100 to 200, 50 to 100 or 200. There are tolerances. It's not going to be the same in every sort of organization. When you look at it, you can see that the revenue, because the project professional, whichever way you buy it, whether you buy it on-prem or in the cloud, Project Pro generates a lot of revenue. In the cloud, Project Online, which is what we're talking about over here, actually in this, let's just take the 50 and the 100 for the moment. That, in order to actually have these guys to connect to the server, we're going to sell 150 Project Onlines. Because the Project Pros need to have the right to access the server, and the way they buy that is to buy the Project Online. So they buy the Project Pro and the Project Online, and so therefore your total is 150. This hasn't been working very well. Why? Because this costs $33 per user per month. So this costs $28 per month. This costs $33, and that gives us somewhere in the region of $52 per user per month for those 50 users. That's a lot of money. And actually, for these people, they don't all need all of the functions. The team members don't need the functions. So in the new model, and we're talking about announcements, we have Project Lite. Project Lite is exactly the same as Project Online, except it's access to a limited number of functions that are just for team members. It is $7 per user per month. And the split that I'm expecting to see will be somewhere around about 50. Over here, you're probably going to get maybe 75 of the Project Onlines. But actually, your Project Lite will increase, and you'll probably end up with somewhere around to 200 to 300 Project Lite, because the people that we wouldn't have bought it for in the past now become cost effective to buy it for them. So we're going to have a huge new opportunity around these lightweight users. And these are typically the team members. And I'll show you how that all works as we move forward. Apologies for the hieroglyphics over here. Disadvantage of being left-handed. It made my childhood was a misery because I kept getting told off by the teachers. But Da Vinci was left-handed, Michelangelo was left-handed, so I'm in good company. These, nevertheless, are relatively expensive licenses, and as partners, you can make significant amounts of money out of them. And that's what I want you to do. That's my main object, is for you guys to make money out of this. And you make money, the greatest thing about a subscription is you make money while you're asleep. That revenue just keeps on churning in, following the Office 365 model.
What about the server cost?
In Project Online, there is no server cost. No, because the moment you buy one Project Online on-premise, that's I'm not talking about on-premise today at all. It's a completely different model on-premise. The moment you buy one Project Online license, the system will provision you with two web front-end servers and one application server. You don't have any control over that, it just does it. Okay? So your infrastructure right from the outset is a really serious infrastructure that is provided for you. Okay. I want to stop PowerPoint for a minute and go in and have a look at the tooling. I need to change the way my screen is presenting. Voila. Welcome to Project Online. What do we see? Well, those of you who are familiar, anybody familiar with 2010? You're familiar with 2010. Anybody else? Yeah. When you look at on the left-hand side here, this is exactly the same as when you saw Project Server 2010. You would have seen these settings on the left-hand side. In fact, even if you go back to 2007, there's still a lot of familiarity. Over here, we see a nice grid with all my projects that are running. In this case, it's organized by their approval status, because we have demand management and workflow approvals as part of the overall offering. And management, well, management want to see these KPIs. They want to see whether or not the KPIs are all green. That's what they really want to see. We actually have got one of them down here that's all green. There we go. But you'll get all sorts of different settings, of course, depending on the projects. And this is what you get primarily with Project Online. I don't get, if I just buy one license of Project Online, I get this, I get approval management, I get tasks and timesheets, I get portfolio management, resources, all of those things with one copy, one license. I don't get the rich project professional. I have to subscribe for that separately. Okay, it's part of Office 365. Those of you who are familiar with it, it sits here in the admin. Okay. If I look down here at licensing, there you can see the Project Online sitting in there in the licensing, just the same as everything else. There is no difference. And by the way, as partners, those of you who become partners, are partners or are going to become partners, sometime in our Q1, maybe early Q2, something that we don't have at the moment, which is terribly embarrassing, we don't have IUR, internal usage rights, for you guys yet, like you would have for Office 365. Okay, but that will be coming along, but you still can create demos at no cost to yourselves through the Microsoft Office Demos site. And that's, at the moment, you can provision Project Online on that. It's like an add-on, but it will be part of the standard Hero demo very shortly, in June, I think. So there we can see the licensing, very straightforward. And those of you familiar with SharePoint, the way we provision the project server functionality is here, and you can see this PWA. We talk about PWA generically. That's the project web app, and basically those are site collections that have the project server functionality switched on inside of them. That's the easiest way to think of it. And they just sit there. And when you have Project Online, what happens is that this part of the ribbon, and there's another one here somewhere, light up. So if I just highlight this one, there you go. So that highlights. But if you haven't got Project Online in your tenant, then that won't be there. So a whole bunch of different features. If I go to the landing page for the collection, lo and behold, it looks like SharePoint. Why? Because it is SharePoint. We talked about how does it work with SharePoint. It's part of SharePoint. It sits in the SharePoint stack. It's an add-on. It's separate code, but it lives within the stack of SharePoint. And therefore, the look and feel of it is very consistent with SharePoint. That's, obviously we want to do that. Again, it's green to differentiate from blue when you are in pure SharePoint. But of course, you wouldn't necessarily use this for a customer. They would configure it to their own look and feel. Let's actually have a look at a project and understand the power of the PWA. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down to this project that's a bit further on down, which is this project health assessment reporting tool. We'll just open that one up. Okay, notice, first of all, you can see that it's published. It says they're published. This means this is the version that everybody can see. But as the project manager, I might be working on a draft copy, which is different from the one that you're looking at right here, right now. But the first thing I want to show you is not the plan, although that's interesting. If we look here at the project ribbon, you can see here project site. And there, lo and behold, we have a SharePoint site that has been automatically provisioned when this project was started up. And this is a place where you keep all your documents, you keep all your risks, your deliverables, your issues, and anything else that you want to put on there. Most customers will customize that and add on a load of other stuff as well. Where it says newsfeed, what's going to be in there? Where it says newsfeed, what would you be putting in there? There we go, thank you. Just make sure the message is out there. My boss looks after Yammer as well, so he'd be very disappointed with me if I didn't really make up that point. And you can see we've got this new web part in here, which will either show me the timeline from inside the project, or if I want it to, it will show me the upcoming or the late tasks in this particular case. So that's rather nice. And in fact, as I said before, it looks just like a task list if you want it to. There you go. Those of you familiar with SharePoint task lists, it looks like a task list. But as I said to you earlier on, there's a nice yellow bar there telling you that it needs to be edited in PWA. Let's go and have a look at that now. So we'll just go back to the first jump that we went to from the project center. There we are. And there we see the plan. And with a bit of luck, if I've left it in a good state, if I press edit, I now, and the question you were asking me before is, what would non-professional project managers use? Here you are. I can add in a task on this. Let's go down to the bottom of the list.
How come this web app hasn't changed name?
Why would it change? Why would it change its name?
All the others are now Word Online instead of Word Web app and Exam Online instead of
That's a good question.
this. Now Project Online is the name of the server, while with all the other applications it's the name of the web app. Is that correct?
It's on a whole naming convention is being reviewed at the moment. I personally, it sucks. Okay, it's confusing because what we need when we call it about Project Online, it's a bad name. It should be called PPMM Online, and within that you can do portfolio, project, task management, demand management. The problem is that that's not the naming convention at the moment, and so you do get this confusion. I agree with you completely on that. So there will be some changes coming forward. Bear with it at the moment. The interface is called Project Web App, and this allows me to do all sorts of different things, but what I'm going to show you here is I'm going to put in a task. We'll make that 20 days, and we'll make that the starting date of the 23rd of the 6th. And that's fine. We'll just move this across. And there you go. There it's arrived in the plan. You haven't got all the other possibilities you can have with the project client. It's a much more simplistic interface. You can choose what you have in this view, like you can choose in any of the views what you have in there. And nothing that you will see today or I've shown you requires any development. It's all configuration. It's designed to be really, really easy to set up and use. Okay, so very easy to set up, very easy to use. There are two things you need to see right now. I'm just conscious of the time. I'm going to close this. I'm just going to discard this change. I'm going to take the same plan. Well, in fact, I'm not going to set the same plan. I'm going to go to down here to the project client. And here you see the project client. This is the rich client. This is the one where people get confused because there are so many options in here. But there are some still things in there that people want to have. So although we don't have all these tabs, the tabs that we do have, the new one, is particularly this reports one, is really important for project managers. As I said before, very easy to do. And for example, if I want to look at a dashboard here that's been set up, I look at a project overview dashboard, not the most exciting one in the universe. Let's find one which is a little bit better. Let's do the work overview. There we are. And this is simply a pivot that's been set up there, reading the database that supports the Microsoft Project client in cached mode when you're offline, and you can build and customize these with the logos. Very, very, very easy to do. So it's for professional project managers, this is something that their eyes light up when they see that, because they spend a lot of time putting reports together. However, if you're online and you've got multiple reports, we just go back to where we were before. Go back to the projects. Down here you'll see a tab that says projects, or a link that says projects. And we have a BI center that will read the SQL database that's sitting on the server using a thing called OData, which is a web service. And when I get to go to reports, English, got project summary, using Excel Online. It's a very good point. This is the sort of report I can produce, and this is across multiple projects. Okay? So here we can simply use slicers to pick out maybe the software development projects. And there they are. Just a subset of all the projects that are there. Okay. One last thing. Give you a couple of minutes for questions. SharePoint projects. SharePoint projects that you need to start up, but they don't need to be full projects. If you set up projects within the PWA collection, that's within the project server environment. So if I go back to Project Web App, there we go. At the top of the list here, we can see an empty stage. And that's because these are what we call invisibility mode. In invisibility mode, let's open up this project. What we see is a standard SharePoint task list. In fact, it's a SharePoint project site that's been created within the PWA collection. This means that as the PMO, I can have an overview of both my managed projects and my unmanaged projects. So I can see all the projects, those which are going through workflow and approvals, and these SharePoint projects that are often simpler projects that don't need all the complexity of the full controls that we might want to have. And to add them in here, just to show you how it's done, we can see add SharePoint sites. I won't actually add it in, but I'll show you what you do. Here you can see I've got a couple of projects yet to be added in, and all I would have to do is click on those and click add, and then it will process them and make them visible. And importantly, if they have resources associated with them, that will be taken over into my overall resource planning as well. It's a quick, very quick jump round of all of this. There is a lot here. You have customers that have older versions. They have project server. They have project clients, 2007, 2010. There is a massive opportunity for you because a lot of them won't have them under EAs. If they have them under EAs, of course, we can go through transitions and get them into the cloud that way. If they haven't got EAs, then let's get them into subscription as quickly as possible. Project Lite is exactly the same as this, what you're looking at. The only difference between Project Lite and the full Project Online client is that you don't see all of those features, or you don't have access to them. So you don't have access to the reports. You don't have access to this, what we call portfolio analysis. You don't have access to the resources because you're just a team member. And so it just chops out those things that you haven't got, you don't need to have access to. But apart from that, when you saw me updating the project, as a team member, I could go and update my project through the web interface as well. It links in with all those other SharePoint things like the task aggregation that you can have within your newsfeed. It can synchronize into the Outlook. So all of these things are available to us, and they're a great opportunity for you guys to go in there. The question that you have to ask your customers is, how well do you run your projects? Do you run them through Project Place? Project Place tends to be Dropbox on speed, from what I've seen. They tend to just share documents on Project Place. They don't do proper planning. It's fine, but it's as far as it goes. And it becomes really expensive. And this actually, when you've got Project Lite in there, is much less expensive. Okay. It is now exactly 1:45. As they say in school, you are dismissed. Thank you very much.